JL Production presents. Over the years, Kansas City has grown to be known for its legacy in jazz, fountains, and parks, but most of all, barbecue. The history of barbecue has influenced Kansas City culture and traditions in many ways and created many well-known restaurants such as Arthur Bryant's, Gates Barbecue, Jack's Steak Barbecue, and much more. One of the first barbecue establishments opened in the United States is known to have started in Kansas City by Henry Perry. Although barbecue has grown to be very significant in this area, the creation of barbecue did not originate in Kansas City. Barbecue was first created by African Americans. It started from slaves cooking outside since they weren't allowed to eat inside, and made barbecue pits outside to slow cook their meat. The start of Kansas City barbecue travels back to the earliest 20th century, when times were much different from today. If you were lucky enough to have tried barbecues from Gates or Arthur Bryant's, then you can thank the old legend named Henry Perry for being the mentor. Henry Perry was born in 1875 in Shelby County, Tennessee. He later arrived in Kansas City and is known as being the father of Kansas City barbecue. Henry Perry gained as much experience at the age of 15, and he got his first job as a cook on the riverboat. Henry Perry was like many others during this time. He was part of known what it was the Great Migration, where African Americans living in the South moved to the North. The Mississippi River was his ticket out of Tennessee, and he eventually found himself in Kansas City in 1907. Soon after settling in downtown Kansas City, Henry Perry got his job as a porter, which he slowly began selling ribs and smoked meats, which he learned how to make in his hometown Tennessee. Henry Perry started selling in a push cart. The garment district in downtown Kansas City was where he sold a lot of his food to many nearby workers. Shortly after, Henry Perry saved enough to open his first barbecue restaurant in Kansas City, which was located in 19th Street near the Jazz District. Now, you may be familiar with the classic slabs of ribs, brisket, and pulled pork, but at the start of Henry Perry's career, he sold different types of meat that you might have never thought about, such as raccoon, possum, mutton, and rabbit sausage. The rest of Henry Perry's consisted of many classics, but what have made the restaurant gain popularity? Henry Perry's special sauce was one of a kind, which brought even people to tears. The sauce was very savory rather than sweet, and heavy on pepper, cayenne, and paprika. At the time, he had a no-frill type of restaurant. He had a sign that said, "My business is to serve you, not to entertain you." He even saved money by using newspaper to wrap his food. Eventually, he upgraded his restaurant to a newer location on 19th and Highland Avenue.
I think the way they did it, especially in the black neighborhoods, is that it was all about the people. You know, it wasn't anything pretentious. It was, you come in and you get quantities of food for not a lot of money, and it was all about the personality of the innkeeper, Henry Perry.
On the 4th of July, 1920, Henry Perry made the first barbecue picnic for the community, where he served beef, pork, and mutton sandwiches, served with watermelon, fresh lemonade, and a soda. He spent $300 out of his pocket to serve about 1,000 people in his community. Ultimately, one of the biggest goals was to bring happiness to the community that supported him and his barbecue business.
Every summer he would do a picnic for like the entire neighborhood, and it was barbecue. Somewhere along those lines, that's how he got started on the barbecue side of his restaurant career.
He fed over 500 people. Henry Perry continued this annual picnic for the people on every 4th of July. He didn't just serve for the people in his community, but people from all over the city, including whites, would come and taste his barbecue since the food was so good. Visitors at the time often came to Kansas City to samples of Henry Perry's legendary barbecue. However, what really made Henry special in his lessons of art seasoning, smoking, and serving meat to Kansas City, spawned by both Bryant's and Gates Barbecue, names that led ways to 100 barbecue restaurants in the city of today. He gave many people jobs and taught them what he knew. This included Charlie and Arthur Bryant of the famous Arthur Bryant's. Another isn't as well known and had a huge influence on the future of Kansas City barbecue. His name is Arthur Pinkert. Arthur Pinkert ended up working for a place called Unkentuck and taught George Gates how to make his barbecue the way Henry Perry taught. George Gates passed on what he learned from Arthur Pinkert to his son, Ollie Gates. The Gates family fixed up the restaurant and continued the legacy. Since then, the Gates family keeps Arthur Pinkert photos in every single one of the restaurant's memory of their mentor. At Perry's Place, customers rich or poor, black or white, paid 25 cents for hot smoked meat over oak wood and hickory and wrapped in newspaper. Several years later, Henry Perry had a stroke in 1931 and was paralyzed on one side. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1940 from pneumonia. After Henry Perry's death, his business was taken over by Arthur Bryant's, who came from Texas, and soon evolved over the restaurant that is known today, Arthur Bryant's.
Arthur Bryant put his name on the map somewhere in the 1960s when we did not have mass media like we have right now. It was magazines, newspapers, and that's pretty much it, some television. A gentleman named Calvin Trillin who wrote for Playboy magazine at that time, called Arthur Bryant's the single greatest restaurant in the world. And that became a mantra throughout the country that people, when they came to Kansas City, had to stop here.
Born in 1902 on a farm in Branchville, Texas, Arthur Bryant's operated what has become the well-known restaurant in Kansas City. Bryant attended what was then Prairie View A&M College and graduated in 1931. He wanted to travel first and got as far as Kansas City, where he would end up visiting his brother Charlie Bryant, who was working for Henry Perry's at the time. When Henry Perry offered a job, he took the opportunity, settled in Kansas City, where he lived the rest of his life. He learned a lot what it was known from the great mentor. Arthur Bryant took over the business in 1946 when his brother Charlie Bryant retired. Henry Perry's harsh, peppery sauce was eventually altered when Arthur took over the business and was not as intense. The name eventually got changed by Perry's Barbecue to Arthur Bryant's, and years later on, Arthur Bryant started getting a lot of recognition and even brought many celebrities you may know today to have stopped by at lunch at Bryant's, including President Barack Obama.
When the president comes in, it happens the same way every single time. They call 45 minutes before, and they get whoever's here. They call and they say, "This is the Secret Service. We will be arriving at such and such a time. The president will be coming to eat."
In 1982, Arthur Bryant passed away of a heart attack in the restaurant and was buried in his hometown, Branchville, Texas.
I'll guarantee you this. Arthur Bryant got it from Henry Perry about how to deal with people. Mr. Bryant always did not want anyone to leave hungry. So our sandwiches, like you saw today, are 12 ounces. Nobody gives that kind of food away, for the price that we pay. So what makes us different is we keep everything of value to the customers. We keep the restaurant as best we can how Mr. Bryant left it for us back in 1982.
It's safe to say the legacy of Henry Perry, Arthur Bryant's, and barbecue as a whole is established in Kansas City. Not as much has changed since Arthur Bryant passed away besides Henry Perry sauce.
But the legacy is to make the name go on forever.